So, I'm sitting at the head of a $10 million boardroom table, the one I paid for, in the company I built from the ground up with nothing but instant ramen and sheer willpower. Across from me are my parents and my sister, Chloe. They're all beaming, looking at me like I'm the second coming. My father, bless his heart, clears his throat with this self-important little cough he does and says, "Son, we're all just so incredibly proud of you. You've done so well. Now, let's get to the paperwork and officially make Chloe the new CEO." The silence that followed was so thick you could have spread it on toast. My CFO, a bulldog of a man named Marcus who had been with me since the garage days, just slowly blinked. My lawyer, a woman so sharp she could probably sue the color blue for copyright infringement, didn't even flinch. She just stared straight ahead. My parents and Chloe were still smiling, completely oblivious, like they'd just said the most normal thing in the world. I let the silence hang there for a good 10 seconds. Then I let out a little chuckle. I couldn't help it. I looked at my parents, then at my sister in her brand new, ridiculously expensive business suit, which I'm pretty sure she bought with the company card I gave her for office supplies, and then I turned to my lawyer. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and steady, "that's not what's happening today at all." The smiles finally faltered. "Let me take you back a bit, because this story is a wild ride, and it doesn't start in a boardroom. It starts with a shiny red bike. I was 8 years old. My sister, Chloe, was 7. Chloe was adopted when she was a baby. From day one, my parents treated her like she was made of spun glass and angel feathers. I was their biological son, but I might as well have been the neighbor's kid they were babysitting indefinitely. They weren't mean to me, not in a storybook villain kind of way. It was more insidious than that. I was just there. I was the reliable, self-sufficient wallpaper in the grand production that was Chloe's life. My parents, you see, had this narrative. They were saviors. They had rescued this beautiful, perfect child. And because they rescued her, they owed her the world. Anything she wanted, she got. Any problem she had, it was someone else's fault. Any failure she experienced was just a learning opportunity for everyone around her to learn how to serve her better. Me? I was the easy one, the old soul, the one who understood, which was parents speak for the one we can safely ignore. So back to the bike. For my 8th birthday, I wanted a red 10-speed bike more than I wanted air to breathe. I had talked about it for months. I did extra chores. I got straight A's. I left pictures of it circled in the Sears catalog on the kitchen table. On my birthday, I tore open my presents to find a set of encyclopedias and a sensible wool sweater. My dad clapped me on the back and said, "A thirst for knowledge is the greatest gift of all, son." I was crushed, but I smiled and said thank you, because that's what the easy one does. 2 months later, it was Chloe's 7th birthday. She hadn't mentioned a bike once. She woke up, and there it was, sitting in the living room with a giant bow on it. A shiny red 10-speed bike. The exact one I had wanted. When I asked my mom why Chloe got the bike, she got this sad look on her face and knelt down. "Honey," she said, in that soft, patronizing tone she reserved for explaining the universe's injustices to me. "You have to understand. We don't know anything about Chloe's biological parents. She might have a genetic predisposition for sadness. We have to make sure her childhood is extra special to make up for her difficult start. You're strong. You understand." I was 8. I didn't understand. I just understood that my feelings didn't matter as much as a hypothetical genetic predisposition for sadness. That was the template for the next decade. Chloe wanted to try ballet. They paid for the most expensive classes, even though she quit after 3 weeks. I made the varsity soccer team. My dad grunted and said, "Don't get hurt." Chloe got a C on a test. My mom would march down to the school and accuse the teacher of not understanding Chloe's unique creative spirit. I got a perfect score on the SATs. My dad nodded and said, "Good. That's what you're supposed to do." The first real crack in my understanding facade came when it was time for college. I had worked my butt off. I got into a great engineering program with a partial scholarship. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, and my parents had always talked about the college fund they'd set up for both of us. When I asked about it, they sat me down at the kitchen table. It was another one of those serious talks. My dad cleared his throat. "Son, we need to talk about the college fund. There's been a change of plans." It turned out Chloe, who had barely graduated high school with a D average, had decided she didn't want to go to college. Instead, she wanted to find herself by backpacking through Europe for a year. And after that, She wanted to go to a very, very expensive private art school in New York. The college fund, it turned out, could cover one of those things. It could cover my 4-year engineering degree at a state school, or it could cover Chloe's European adventure and 1 semester of art school. You can guess what they chose. She needs this, my mom said, her eyes pleading. She's at a crossroads. She's so sensitive. You've always been so resilient. You'll figure it out. I did figure it out. I figured it out by taking out student loans. I figured it out by working 3 different part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. I figured it out by eating ramen noodles for dinner 5 nights a week and living in a crappy apartment with 3 other dudes. I graduated with honors, a mountain of debt, and a deep, cold resentment that I buried under a mountain of ambition. During those years, Chloe floated. She went to Europe, spent all the money, came back with a questionable accent and a portfolio of truly terrible charcoal sketches. She lasted exactly 1 semester at the art school before declaring it creatively stifling. She moved back home and drifted from 1 minimum wage job to another, getting fired from most of them for being late or lazy or, on 1 memorable occasion, for rearranging the store's inventory according to its color aura. My parents supported her through it all, paying her car insurance, her phone bill, giving her spending money. They called it nurturing her spirit. Meanwhile, I was working in a soul-crushing cubicle at a big tech firm. But I had an idea, a big one, an app that would streamline logistics for small businesses. I spent every spare second I had coding in my tiny apartment. I poured all my savings, which wasn't much, into developing a prototype. It was grueling. I didn't sleep. I didn't have a social life. But for the first time, I was building something for me. Something no one could give to Chloe instead. After 2 years, I had a working prototype and a solid business plan. I quit my job. I moved into an even cheaper apartment and lived off my credit cards. I pitched my idea to over 50 venture capitalists. 54 of them said no. The 55th said yes. And just like that, my life changed. The first 2 years of the business were a blur of 18-hour days. I hired my first employee, then my second. We worked out of my garage. We landed our first major client. Then another. We were growing fast. We finally moved into a real office, a small, rented space in a boring industrial park. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. That's when my parents started getting interested. They'd call, not to ask how I was, but for a progress report. They started dropping by the office unannounced, bringing Chloe with them. Chloe, who was then 28, was in another one of her transitional periods, which meant she was unemployed and living at home. One evening, my mom called me. "Honey, your father and I were talking. We are so proud of your little company, but we're worried about Chloe. She's so bright, but she just hasn't found her niche. We thought, maybe you could give her a job." My blood ran cold. Mom, she has no experience. What would she even do? Oh, anything. Receptionist, office manager, something to give her some structure. She's family, sweetie. You have to take care of family. I was exhausted. I was overwhelmed with work. I didn't have the energy to fight them. Against my every instinct, I agreed. I told myself it would be fine. I'd give her some simple tasks. How badly could she mess up answering phones? Famous last words. Let me tell you, Chloe's incompetence was almost an art form. It was breathtaking in its scope and audacity. She showed up late every day, usually with a Starbucks cup in hand. Acting as if we should all be grateful, she graced us with her presence. She spent most of her time on social media. She messed up scheduling so many times that I had 2 different clients show up for the same meeting slot. The worst, though, was her attitude. She acted like she was the co-owner. She'd try to give orders to my engineers, people with PhDs. She'd take 2-hour lunches and get offended when I asked where she'd been. I was networking, she'd say, dead serious. Every time I tried to talk to her about her performance, it would blow up in my face. She'd burst into tears and call mom and dad. Within the hour, I'd get a furious phone call. "How could you be so hard on her?" My mom would screech. "She's trying her best. You know she's sensitive. You're her brother. You're supposed to support her." The final straw came about 6 months in. We were trying to land a huge client, a make-or-break deal that would take us to the next level. I had been preparing the pitch for weeks. The day of the meeting, I asked Chloe to do one thing. Print 20 copies of the final proposal and have them bound and ready in the conference room by 9 a.m. I walked into the conference room at 8:55. The clients were there. There were no proposals on the table. I found Chloe in the break room, listening to a podcast. "Chloe, where are the proposals?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She looked at me, confused. Oh shoot. I totally forgot. The printer was being weird anyway. I saw red. I didn't yell. I just said, very quietly, go to my office. Now, I managed to salvage the meeting by using the digital version on my laptop. We got the contract, no thanks to her. Afterwards, I called her into my office and I fired her. I was professional. I was calm. I said it wasn't a good fit and I wished her the best. She looked at me in total shock, as if I'd just started speaking in tongues. Then came the waterworks. And then, the call to mom and dad. That night, they showed up at my apartment. They didn't knock. They used the emergency key I'd given them and just walked in. They looked like they were ready for war. I cannot believe you, my dad started, his voice shaking with rage. After everything we've done for you. We gave you a good home. We fed you. We clothed you. You fired your own sister, my mom wailed. What is wrong with you? She looked up to you. This little company has gone to your head. You've forgotten what's important. You've forgotten about family. They went on like that for an hour. They accused me of being jealous of her, of being cruel, of being selfish. Not once did they ask what she had done. Not once did they consider that she might have been the one at fault. In their eyes, it was impossible. Chloe was the victim. I was the monster. That was the breaking point. It was the moment I finally, truly understood. It wasn't about strength or sensitivity. It wasn't about who was easy and who was hard. They had chosen their child. And it wasn't me. It never had been. A cold, quiet clarity washed over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Okay, I said, my voice eerily calm. You're right. I made a mistake. I'll rehire her. Their whole demeanor changed. They softened immediately, smiles returning to their faces. Oh, honey, we knew you'd see reason, my mom said, hugging me. I didn't hire her back. I just ghosted them. I changed my locks. I blocked their numbers. I told the receptionist at my new, much larger office. We were now a 50-person company, that my family was not to be allowed in the building under any circumstances. For the next 2 years, the company exploded. We hit every target. We became a leader in our sector. I was featured in magazines. We were valued at over $50 million. And I had 2 years of blessed, wonderful peace. And then, they found a way back in. I got a letter from a lawyer. It stated that my parents, as my earliest advisors and moral supporters, were claiming a stake in the company. They said I had made a verbal agreement years ago that the business was a family venture and that Chloe was always intended to have a leadership role. It was complete and utter nonsense. But I knew they could make things messy. They could drag my name through the mud. So, I had my lawyer reach out. We agreed to a meeting to discuss their concerns. I knew it was a trap, but I had a plan. I told my lawyer to agree to their terms for the meeting. They wanted to meet in my office, in the main boardroom. They wanted to bring Chloe, and they wanted to discuss a transition plan. I said yes to all of it. I told them, through our lawyers, that I had had a change of heart, that I realized they were right. That family was what mattered, and it was time to make things right. They bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. Which brings us back to that boardroom. My father had just finished his little speech about making Chloe the new CEO. The air was thick with their smug satisfaction. After I said, actually, that's not what's happening today at all, my mother's smile tightened. Don't be difficult, son. We've all agreed. It's for the best. We haven't agreed to anything, I said, leaning forward. Let's be very clear about what's happening here. You are here because you sent me a threatening letter from a lawyer based on lies, in an attempt to extort a position for your daughter in a company she is dangerously unqualified to run. My father started turning red. Now, you listen here. We supported you. No. I cut him off, my voice like steel. You didn't. You never supported me. You tolerated me. You ignored me. You took the money that should have paid for my education and you gave it to her, so she could finger paint in Paris. When I started this company, you called it a cute little hobby. You only became interested when it started making money. Your support is conditional, and the condition is that Chloe gets whatever she wants. I turned to Chloe, who was staring at me, her mouth hanging open. Chloe, did you really think this was going to happen? You think you can run a multi-million-dollar tech company? You couldn't even run a printer. I gestured to Marcus, my CFO. Marcus, would you mind sharing Chloe's employee file with the room? Marcus, looking grimly satisfied, pushed a button. The big screen on the wall lit up. On it was Chloe's complete record. Her attendance, late 84% of the time. A list of her scheduling errors, with the estimated financial losses next to each one. a formal written warning for misuse of the company credit card, and a detailed report from the IT department about her internet usage, which showed she spent an average of 6.7 hours per day on Facebook, Instagram, and shopping websites. Chloe went pale. My mother gasped. So, no, I continued, my voice calm. Chloe will not be CEO. In fact, based on the information we've just reviewed and the fraudulent claims made in your legal letter, any association she ever had with this company is now permanently terminated. You are trespassing. You can't do this, my mother shrieked, standing up. We're your family. No, I said, standing up as well. You are the people who happened to raise me. My family are the people in this company who bled and sweat alongside me to build this. My family are the people who believed in me when I had nothing. I looked at my dad. His face was a mess of confusion and fury. I loved you, I said, and the words surprised me with how much they still hurt. All I ever wanted was for you to be as proud of me as you were of her for just existing. But that was never going to happen. I see that now. I nodded to the door, where two security guards I'd hired for the occasion were waiting discreetly. Security will now escort you out. My lawyer will be in touch with yours regarding the fraudulent claims. Goodbye. My mother started screaming. My father just stared, his face ashen. Chloe finally burst into tears, wailing about how unfair it was. It was a complete meltdown. The security guards were very professional as they led them out of the boardroom. When the door closed, the silence returned. Marcus let out a long, slow breath. Well, he said, that was overdue. And that was it. The aftermath was messy, of course. They tried to smear me to the entire extended family. Aunts and uncles called to tell me I was a monster. But I sent a single, concise email to the whole family with a copy of Chloe's performance review and the lawyer's letter. The call stopped pretty quick. I haven't spoken to them since. Sometimes, I feel a pang of sadness for the family I wish I'd had. But mostly, I just feel free. My company is thriving. We're about to go public. The people who work with me are loyal and brilliant, and we're building something incredible together. A few weeks ago, I heard from a cousin that Chloe finally had to get a real job as a barista. Apparently, she's complaining that it's creatively stifling. My parents had to sell their house and downsize. I guess it's expensive to support a 30-year-old freeloader when you no longer have access to your son's bank account.